You cannot even speak properly, can you?" The words cut through the grand hall like a blade, and Alara felt every eye in the room turn toward her. Lady Vivian stood at the center of the ornate council chamber, her crimson gown a stark contrast to Alara's ill-fitting borrowed dress of faded gray. The lady's smile was sharp, calculated, designed to draw blood without ever touching skin. "Tell us, girl, what is your understanding of the covenant of the crescent moon as it pertains to the ancient rites of the lunar binding?" The question was delivered in the formal tongue, words that twisted and turned in ways Alara had never heard before. Around her, the assembled nobles and courtiers whispered behind jeweled fans and gloved hands. She could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on her shoulders like stones. This was not her world. These were not her people. And they wanted her to know it. Alara's throat tightened. She understood perhaps 3 words in that entire sentence. Her hands, rough from years of washing floors and hauling water, clenched at her sides. The grand hall of the Blackthorn Palace was everything she was not. Magnificent, educated, refined. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across marble floors so polished she could see her own reflection. A girl who did not belong, staring back at her with frightened eyes. She had been brought here by force, dragged from her small room above the bakery where she worked, because some ancient law said all. Unmated females of age must present themselves to the Alpha King. She had not wanted to come. She had begged the enforcers to let her stay, to let her remain invisible as she had always been. But the law was the law. And now she stood in a room full of predators wearing silk and diamonds, and they smelled her fear like wolves scenting blood on the wind. "I am sorry," Alara said quietly, her voice barely carrying past the first row of observers. "I do not understand the question." The laughter started small, a few muffled chuckles from the back of the hall, but it grew quickly, spreading like wildfire through the assembled crowd. Someone whispered loudly enough for her to hear. "They let anyone in these days, do they not?" Another voice, feminine and cruel, added, "Perhaps she can scrub floors for us after the ceremony. At least she would be useful then." Alara's face burned. She wanted to run, to disappear, to wake up back in her tiny room where the world made sense and people spoke. In words she could follow. But her feet were rooted to the spot, held there by some combination of pride and terror that would not let her flee even as her heart screamed at her to move. Lady Vivian's smile widened. She was beautiful in the way a poisonous flower is beautiful. All elegance and danger wrapped in a deceptively lovely package. Her dark hair was piled high on her head, woven through with silver thread that caught the light with every movement. She had been presented to the Alpha King 3 times now, each time more determined to catch his attention, to become his chosen Luna. The Silver Moon bloodline she came from was ancient and powerful, and she had been groomed since birth for this role. And then this girl, this nobody from nowhere, had been brought before the court, and Vivian had seen an opportunity to demonstrate exactly what happened to those who did not know their place. "Let me simplify for you then," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "In the old tongue, I asked you about the sacred laws that govern mate bonds. Can you tell me, in your own simple words, what you believe makes a bond between Alpha and Luna legitimate?" It was a trap. Any answer Alara gave would be wrong. If she spoke of love, they would mock her for being naive. If she spoke of duty, they would criticize her for not understanding passion. If she said nothing, they would call her ignorant. There was no winning this game, and Alara knew it. But before she could open her mouth to answer, before she could even decide what words might possibly save her from this humiliation, something happened that changed everything. The massive doors at the far end of the hall, the ones that led to the throne room, swung open with a resonance that silenced every whisper, every laugh, every cruel comment. And through those doors walked Alpha King Demon Blackthorn. The air itself seemed to shift when he entered, charged with a power that made the hair on end. Alara's arms stand straight up. He was tall, impossibly tall, with broad shoulders that filled the doorway, and a presence that commanded attention without him having to speak a single word. His hair was black as midnight, falling just past his collar, and his eyes were the gold of a wolf in moonlight, bright and fierce and absolutely focused. He wore black from head to toe, leather and fine wool that spoke of both warrior and king, and when he moved, it was with the fluid grace of a predator who knew exactly how dangerous he was. The entire court dropped into bows and curtsies so deep that foreheads nearly touched the floor. Alara, not knowing the proper protocol, simply bent at the waist. Her eyes lowered because even she knew you did not stare directly at an alpha king unless he gave you permission. Her heart hammered in her chest. She had seen him only once before, at the very beginning of the presentation ceremony, when all the unmated females had been lined up like cattle at market. He had walked past them, his expression unreadable, his golden eyes scanning the crowd without seeming to truly see any of them. She had thought he looked lonely, which was a strange thing to think about the most powerful man in the kingdom. But there had been something in the set of his shoulders, the way he held himself apart from everyone else, that had made her heart ache with recognition. She knew what it was like to be surrounded by people and still feel utterly alone. "Rise," Demon said, and his voice was deep, rough around the edges like gravel and smoke. The court obeyed immediately, heads lifting, eyes turning toward him with a mixture of fear and worship. He did not look at any of them. His gaze was fixed on the center of the hall, on Lady Vivian, and the girl who stood before her like a lamb prepared for slaughter. "I heard laughter," he continued, moving down the center aisle with measured steps. "Someone explained to me what is so amusing that it disrupts a sacred ceremony." The silence that followed was absolute. No one wanted to be the one to speak, to draw the Alpha King's attention and potentially his displeasure. Vivian, however, was not so easily cowed. She had been playing court politics since she could walk, and she knew how to navigate dangerous waters. "Your Majesty," she said, sinking into a graceful curtsy before rising to meet his eyes with practiced confidence. "We were simply testing the knowledge of the candidates, as is customary. I asked this girl about the covenant of the crescent moon, and she admitted she does not understand the question. Surely you agree that a potential Luna must possess at least a basic education in our laws and traditions." It was a reasonable argument, delivered with just enough deference to seem respectful while still making her point clear. The girl was unsuitable. The girl was beneath them. The girl should be sent away so that those who were qualified could continue the competition. Alara felt her stomach twist. She wanted to defend herself, to say something that would prove she was not stupid, just uneducated. But the words would not come. How could she explain to these people that she had spent her childhood working instead of learning? That books were a luxury she could not afford? That survival had been more important than scholarship? Demon stopped walking. He stood now directly in front of Vivienne, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact, and there was something in his expression that made even her confidence waver slightly. "The covenant of the crescent moon," he said slowly, "is written in the old tongue, a language that has not been spoken commonly for over 200 years. It is taught only to noble children as part of their formal education." He turned then, his gaze shifting to Alara, and she felt the full weight of his attention settle on her like a physical thing. His eyes were not cruel. They were assessing, measuring, but not unkind. "Tell me," he said, addressing her directly for the first time. "What is your name?" "Alara, Your Majesty," she managed, her voice steadier than she expected. She forced herself to meet his eyes, even though every instinct screamed at her to look away, to submit, to make herself small. But something in his gaze held her, made her stand straighter despite her fear. "Just Alara. I do not have a family name." That admission brought fresh whispers from the crowd. No family. Name meant no lineage, no pack affiliation, no status whatsoever. It marked her as the lowest of the low, someone who existed on the fringes of their society, tolerated but never truly accepted. But Demon did not seem surprised or disappointed. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if she had confirmed something he already suspected. "Just Alara," he repeated, and there was something almost gentle in the way he said her name, as if it was valuable simply because it belonged to her. Lady Vivian asked, "You a question in a language you were never taught, about laws you have never had the privilege to study. That is not a test of intelligence. That is simply cruelty, dressed up as propriety." The words landed like a thunderclap. Vivian's face went pale, then flushed an angry red. Around them, the court seemed to collectively hold its breath. No one contradicted the Alpha King. No one accused a member of the Silvermoon family of cruelty. But Demon Blackthorn had just done both, and he did not look like a man who regretted his words. He turned back to Alara, and when he spoke again, his voice had softened just slightly, enough that she could hear the genuine curiosity beneath the command. "I am going to ask you a question, Alara. Not in the old tongue, not in formal speech, just in plain words that anyone can understand." He paused, and she saw something flicker in his golden eyes, something that looked almost like hope. "What do you think makes a bond between two people real, not legal, not traditional, not politically advantageous? Real." The question hung in the air between them. It was not what she had expected. It was not a test of knowledge or breeding or social grace. It was something far more dangerous. He was asking her to speak from her heart, to share what she truly believed, and she had no idea if her answer would damn her or save her. Alara took a breath. Her hands had stopped shaking. The fear was still there, coiled tight in her chest, but beneath it was something else. Anger, maybe. Or perhaps just exhaustion from pretending to be less than she was. "I think," she said carefully, her voice carrying clearly through the silent hall, "that a bond is real when two people choose each other. Not because they have to, not because someone told them they should, but because when they look at each other, they see someone worth fighting for, someone worth protecting, someone worth being honest with, even when the truth is hard." She could feel the eyes of the court on her, judging her simple words, finding them lacking in poetry or sophistication. But she could not be anything other than what she was. "I think a bond is real when you trust someone to see the worst parts of you and not turn away. When you know they will catch you if you fall, and you would do the same for them without question. It is not about crowns or titles or bloodlines. It is about looking at another person and thinking, I would rather stand with you in darkness than stand alone in light." The silence that followed her words was different from before. It was not the silence of mockery or judgment. It was the silence of people who had not expected to hear truth spoken so plainly, so fearlessly. Ilara's heart pounded as she watched Demon's face, trying to read his reaction. His expression had gone very still, his golden eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like he could see straight through to her soul. For a long moment, he said nothing. He simply looked at her, and she looked back, and something passed between them that had no name, no explanation, no rational foundation. It simply was. Then Demon did something that no one in that hall expected. He smiled. It was a small smile, barely a curve of his lips, but it transformed his entire face. The hard edges softened. The loneliness she had glimpsed before seemed to recede, replaced by something that looked dangerously close to wonder. "That," he said quietly, though his voice still carried to every corner of the room, "is the most honest answer I have heard in 5 years of these ceremonies." He turned to face the assembled court, his expression hardening once more into the mask of the Alpha King. "Let me be clear. I do not care about bloodlines. I do not care about education in dead languages. I do not care about who can navigate court politics with the most grace." His gaze swept across the sea of noble faces, landing briefly on Lady Vivian, who looked like she might be sick. "I care about finding someone who understands what it means to stand beside me. Not behind me, not beneath me, beside me. And I believe I have just heard exactly that." The implications of his words rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Alara felt dizzy. Was he saying what she thought he was saying? Was he choosing her? That could not be right. That made no sense. She was nobody. She had nothing to offer a king except honesty. And surely that was not enough. Surely he would come to his senses in a moment and realize his mistake. But Demon was already moving, closing the distance between them until he stood directly in front of her. Close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his golden eyes. Close enough that his scent surrounded her. Pine and earth, and something wild that made her wolf, dormant and silent for her entire life, suddenly stir within her chest. "Do you know what you are, Alara?" he asked softly. And there was something in his voice that made her think he was not really asking a question, but rather confirming something he already knew. "I am just a baker's assistant, Your Majesty," she whispered, because that was the truth, the only truth she had ever known about herself. But Demon shook his head slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. "No," he said. "You are so much more than that. You just do not know it yet." He reached out, and she held perfectly still as his hand came up to touch her face, his fingers brushing against her left temple where her hair fell across her forehead. His touch was warm, gentle, and when his fingers made contact with her skin, she felt it. A spark, a connection, something that shot through her entire body like lightning, making her gasp, making her wolf surge forward with a strength she had never felt before. Demon's eyes flared bright gold, his wolf clearly visible just beneath the surface, and she knew he felt it too. This was not politics. This was not strategy. This was the mate bond, raw and undeniable, snapping into place between them like a chain forged by the gods themselves. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. "You bear the mark," Demon said, his voice rough with emotion he was not bothering to hide. "The mark of the first Lunas. I can see it now, clear as day. Moonlight silver against your skin, right here." His fingers traced a pattern on her temple that she could not see, had never known was there. It has been hidden, suppressed by something or someone, but it is there. You are not nobody, Alara. You are the last daughter of the Silver Moon line. The true Silver Moon line, not the pretenders who stole the name after your ancestors were slaughtered. The words made no sense. Alara shook her head, trying to step back, but his hand had moved to cup her face, holding her gently but firmly in place. "That cannot be true," she said, her voice breaking. "I am an orphan. I have been alone my entire life. I have no family, no history, nothing. You have been hidden," Demon corrected, and there was anger in his voice now, but she instinctively knew it was not directed at her. "Someone very powerful suppressed your bloodline, buried it so deep that even you could not feel your own wolf until now. But the moment I touched you, the moment our bond activated, whatever spell or curse was placed on you began to break. Can you not feel it? Can you not feel her waking up? Inside you?" And she could. Oh gods, she could. The wolf that had always been silent, the one she had assumed was defective or weak or simply non-existent, was rising inside her like a tide. She could feel the strength flooding her limbs, the sharpness entering her senses, the primal awareness of her own power, unfurling like wings she had never known she possessed. It was terrifying and exhilarating and overwhelming all at once. Lady Vivian's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "This is absurd. Your Majesty, you cannot possibly believe this girl has any connection to the First Lunas. The bloodline ended 3 centuries ago. Everyone knows this. She is clearly trying to deceive you." But Demon did not even look at her. His attention was completely, utterly focused on Alara, and there was a possessiveness in his gaze that made her shiver. "The mark does not lie," he said flatly. "Only those of the First Luna bloodline carry it, and only an Alpha King can see it. It is one of the sacred gifts passed down through my line, specifically so that we would recognize our true mates when we found them. He finally turned to address the court, his hand still cradling Alara's face like she was something precious, something worth protecting. The presentation ceremony is over. I have found my mate, my Luna, and anyone who questions her right to stand beside me will answer to me personally. The declaration sent the hall into chaos. Voices rose in protest, in shock, in disbelief. The noble families who had sent their daughters to compete for the Alpha King's favor were outraged. This was not how things were done. This was not proper. This girl had no training, no education, no understanding of how to be a Luna. She would be a disaster. She would embarrass the kingdom. She would weaken the throne. But Demon silenced them all with a single look, his power rolling out across the hall like a physical wave that made every wolf present drop their gaze and bare their necks in submission. I did not ask for your approval, he said coldly. I do not require it. I am your king, and this is my choice. Challenge it if you dare, but know that I will defend her with my last breath, and I do not lose. The threat was clear, absolute, and in that moment, Alara understood just how much danger she was in. Not from Demon, who looked at her like she was his salvation made flesh, but from everyone else. From the nobles who would see her as a threat. From the families whose ambitions she had just destroyed. From Lady Vivian, who stood frozen in place with hatred burning in her eyes like a cold fire. Demon turned back to her, and his expression softened once more, the harsh king disappearing to reveal the man beneath. I know you are frightened, he said quietly, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone in a gesture so tender it made her throat tight. I know this is not what you wanted or expected, but I swear to you, on my life and my crown, that I will protect you. No one will harm you while I draw breath. Do you understand? Alara searched his face, looking for deception, for manipulation, for any sign that this was some cruel game. But all she found was sincerity. Raw, honest sincerity that matched the words she had spoken earlier about what made a bond real. He was choosing her. He was standing with her in the darkness, just as she had described. And somehow, despite every logical reason to refuse, despite the terror clawing at her insides, found herself nodding. I understand, she whispered. But I do not know how to be what you need. Then we will learn together, Demon said, and he smiled again. That small, devastating smile that transformed him from untouchable king to someone almost human. I do not need you to be perfect, Alara. I need you to be exactly who you are. Honest. Brave enough to speak truth even when the world is laughing at you. Strong enough to stand when everything in you wants to run. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers, and when he spoke again, his voice was so soft that only she could hear. I have been alone for so long, surrounded by people who want something from me, who see the crown and not the man. But you looked at me during the initial ceremony, and you saw me. I felt it, and I have been searching for you ever since. The confession made her chest ache. She had seen him. She had seen the loneliness in him because it matched her own. And in that moment of recognition, something had sparked between them that neither of them had fully understood. Until now. What happens next? Alara asked, because she genuinely did not know. She had no reference point for this, no experience with royal protocols or mating ceremonies or anything that existed in this world of marble and crystal and power. Demon straightened, his hand finally dropping from her face, though he immediately captured her hand in his fingers lacing through hers in a gesture that was both possessive and protective. Next, he said, his voice returning to its full strength, carrying once more to the entire assembly. We complete the claiming ceremony. Tonight, under the full moon, I will mark you as mine, and you will mark me as yours. The bond will be sealed, and you will take your rightful place as Luna Queen. The words sent a thrill of fear and anticipation racing down her spine. Tonight. Everything would change tonight. But before they could move, before Demon could lead her. From the hall, Lady Vivian stepped forward. Her face was composed now, the initial shock masked behind a veneer of cold dignity. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Forgive me, but there is a tradition that must be observed. Any woman who claims the title of Luna must pass the trial of the moon. Surely you do not intend to set aside centuries of precedent." It was a brilliant tactical move. Vivian could not challenge Demon's choice directly, but she could force Alara into a situation where she might fail, where her lack of training and education would be on full display. The trial of the moon was a series of tests designed to prove Aluna's worthiness, her strength, her wisdom, her ability to lead. It was grueling even for women who had been preparing for it their entire lives. For someone like Alara, who knew nothing about werewolf traditions or pack dynamics or combat, it would be nearly impossible. Demon's expression darkened dangerously. "The trial of the moon is optional, Lady Vivian. Not mandatory. It has not been required for over a century." But Vivian pressed on, turning to address the court rather than the king. "Perhaps not required, Your Majesty. But can you imagine the talk if your chosen Luna does not undergo the same trials that every other Luna Queen has faced? The other packs will question her legitimacy. They will see her as weak, as unworthy. They will challenge her at every turn, and such challenges could destabilize the entire kingdom." She was right, and everyone in the room knew it. Alara could see the calculation in Vivian's eyes. If Alara refused the trial, she would appear cowardly. If she accepted and failed, she would be humiliated, and Demon would have no choice but to reconsider his decision. It was a trap, with no good escape. Except that Alara was tired of being underestimated. Tired of being told she was not enough. Tired of people assuming she would fail because she did not come from their world. Of privilege and power. "I will take the trial," Alara heard herself say, and the words came out stronger than she expected. She felt Demon tense beside her, his hand tightening around hers, but she did not look at him. She kept her gaze fixed on Vivian, on that smug, calculating face that represented everything she had spent her life being excluded from. If it will end the questions, if it will prove that I am not just hiding behind the Alpha King's protection, then I will face whatever tests you have. She finally turned to meet Demon's eyes, and what she saw there took her breath away. Pride. Fierce, undeniable pride, mixed with concern and something deeper that she did not yet have a name for. "You do not have to do this," he said quietly, his free hand coming up to touch her cheek once more. "I chose you. That should be enough. But it is not enough for them," Alara replied, nodding slightly toward the assembled court. "And if I am to be your Luna, if I am to stand beside, then I need to prove I can hold my own. Not just for them, but for myself." She had spent her entire life invisible, discounted, overlooked. But something had changed the moment Demon had called her worthy. The moment he had seen the mark she did not know she carried. The moment her wolf had woken up inside her, stretching and snarling and ready to fight. She was not the same girl who had walked into this hall expecting to be dismissed. She was becoming something else. Something more. And she would be damned if she let people like Vivian make her feel small ever again. Demon studied her face for a long moment, and then he nodded slowly. "Very well," he said, and though his voice was calm, she could hear the steel beneath it. He turned back to the court, his expression hard as granite. "Alara will undergo the trial of the moon. 3 tests, as tradition dictates. Trial of strength, trial of wisdom, trial of heart. She will complete them all, and when she succeeds, there will be no more questions about her worthiness. Is that understood?" The emphasis he placed on when, not if, was not lost on anyone. He believed she would pass. He had absolute faith in her, even though they had just met. even though he knew almost nothing about her beyond the mark on her skin and the words she had spoken. That faith was a gift more valuable than any crown. "The trials will begin tomorrow at dawn," Vivian announced, and there was satisfaction in her voice that made Alara's newly awakened wolf growl low in her chest. "That gives you tonight to prepare. I do hope it is enough time." The implication was clear. It would not be enough time. Alara had no training, no preparation, no idea what she was walking into. She was going to fail, and everyone knew it. Everyone except Demon, who was looking at her like she had already won. "Come," he said, tugging gently on her hand. "We have much to discuss, and I would prefer to have those conversations away from an audience." He led her toward a side door, away from the main entrance, and the crowd parted for them like water around stone. Alara could feel their stares burning into her back, could hear the whispers starting up again the moment they passed. But Demon's hand was warm and solid in hers, anchoring her, reminding her that she was not facing this alone. The corridor beyond the great hall was quieter, lined with portraits of past kings and queens, their painted eyes seeming to follow Alara as she walked past. Demon did not speak until they had climbed 2 flights of stairs and entered a private study, rich with dark wood and leather, a fire crackling in the hearth even though the day was warm. He released her hand only to close and lock the door behind them, ensuring their privacy. Then he turned to face her, and she saw that the mask had fallen away completely. He looked exhausted, worried, and underneath it all, hopeful in a way that made him seem younger, more vulnerable. "You should not have agreed to the trial," he said, running a hand through his black hair in a gesture of frustration. "Vivian is setting you up to fail. The trial of strength requires combat training you do not have. The trial of wisdom involves questions about pack law and history that you have never studied. The trial of heart is deliberately designed to be emotionally devastating, forcing you to choose between impossible options." "Then why did you not refuse on my behalf?" Alara asked, moving closer to the fire because suddenly she was cold, her body shaking with delayed shock from everything that had just happened. "You are the king. You could have simply said no." Demon's laugh was bitter. "Because Vivian was right about one thing. The other packs will question you. They will test you, challenge you, try to find any weakness they can exploit. If you do not face these trials now, you will spend the rest of your life proving yourself over and over again. At least this way. If you succeed, it ends the debate." He moved to stand beside her, both of them staring into the flames. "But I will not lie to you. The trials are dangerous. People have died attempting them, and you have less than 24 hours to prepare for tests that others spend years training for. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below." Alara felt the panic trying to claw its way up her throat, but she shoved it down. She had not come this far, had not survived everything life had thrown at her, just to give up now. "Then we had better not waste time," she said firmly. "You said my wolf is waking up, that I have power I never knew existed. Teach me how to use it. Show me what I need to know." Demon turned to look at her, and there was something almost like awe in his expression. "You are extraordinary," he said softly. "Do you know that? Most people in your position would be running for the nearest exit. But you are standing here asking me to train you for a trial. That might kill you, all because you refused to let someone make you feel less than." "I have been less than my entire life," Alara replied, meeting his golden gaze without flinching. "I have been the girl people step over. The one they forget is even in the room. But you saw me. You called me worthy. You said I bear the mark of the first Lunas, that I am someone important, someone with power. I do not know if that is true. I do not know if this mark you see is real, or if my wolf will be strong enough. But I am tired of being invisible. I am tired of apologizing for existing. So if there is even a chance that I can pass these trials, that I can prove I belong here, then I am going to take it." She took a breath, steadying herself. Teach me, please. Whatever I need to know, whatever I need to be able to do. I am a fast learner. I have to be. That is how people like me survive. Demon reached out and pulled her into his arms, and the embrace was so unexpected, so needed, that Alara felt tears prick at her eyes. He was warm and solid, and smelled like safety, and for just a moment she let herself lean into him, let herself take comfort from his strength. I will teach you, he murmured against her hair. I will give you every advantage I can. But Alara, you need to understand something. The mate bond between us is new, untested. It will give you access to some of my strength, but it is not a substitute for training. And there are rules about how much I can help. During the actual trials, I cannot fight for you. I cannot answer the questions for you. I can only stand by and watch. And if you are in danger, I do not know if I will be able to stop myself from intervening, which would disqualify you immediately. She pulled back just enough to look up at him. Then we make sure I am prepared enough that you do not have to intervene. She said simply. Where do we start? The next hours passed in a blur of information and physical training that left Alara's head spinning and her body aching. Demon took her to a private training room deep in the palace, a space warded with magic that would prevent anyone from spying on them. There, he began to teach her the basics of calling on her wolf, of letting the animal instincts rise to the surface without losing control. It was harder than she expected. Her wolf was strong, far stronger than she had imagined, but it was also wild, untamed, angry at having been suppressed for so long. Every time Alara tried to shift, to let the transformation take hold, her wolf surged forward too fast, too hard, and Demon had to talk her down, had to help her find the balance between human and animal. You are fighting her, he said after her fourth failed attempt, his hands on her shoulders grounding her. Your wolf is not your enemy. She is part of you. You do not control her. You work with her. Alara wanted to scream in frustration. Everything she had ever learned about survival had been about control, about keeping her emotions locked down, about not drawing attention. And now, she was being told to do the opposite, to embrace the wildness, to let go. It went against every instinct she had developed over 23 years of life. But she trusted Demon. She trusted the mate bond that hummed between them, growing stronger with every passing moment. So she tried again. This time, when her wolf rose, Alara did not fight. She let the power flow through her, let her bones begin to shift and reshape, let the pain and the pleasure of transformation wash over her in equal measure. And for the first time in her life, she felt complete, whole. Like a piece of herself she had not known was missing had finally clicked into place. When the shift was complete, she stood on 4 legs instead of 2, her senses exploding with input. She could smell everything. The leather of the training mats, the metal of the weapons hanging on the walls, the unique scent of Demon, pine and earth and something. Distinctly him that made her wolf rumble with contentment. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady. She could see in the dim light as clearly as if it were midday. This was what it meant to be a werewolf. This was the power she had been denied her entire life. Demon shifted beside her, his own transformation smooth and practiced, and when she saw his wolf form, her breath caught. He was massive, easily twice her size, with fur as black as his human hair, and those same golden eyes that seemed to glow from within. He was magnificent, terrifying and beautiful in equal measure. He approached her slowly, carefully, touching his nose to hers in a gesture that her wolf understood instinctively. Acceptance. Recognition. Mate. They spent an hour like that, running through the training room, Demon teaching her how to use her new body, how to fight with claws and teeth, how to use her smaller size to her advantage. She was fast, faster than he expected, and her instincts were sharp. When he lunged at her in a mock attack, she dodged and countered with a move that actually made him stumble, and she could have sworn she heard him laugh in her mind. They were connected now, the mate bond allowing them to share thoughts and feelings even in wolf form. It was intimate in a way that should have frightened her, but instead felt like coming home. Eventually, Demon signaled for them to shift back. The transformation to human was easier this time, her body remembering the path, and when she stood on two legs again, naked and shaking with exhaustion, Demon was already wrapping a robe around her shoulders, protecting her modesty without her having to ask. "You are a natural," he said, and there was genuine admiration in his voice. "I have seen trained warriors with less instinct than you just demonstrated." Elara pulled the robe tight around herself, suddenly aware of how intimate this all was. They had been touching, moving together, sharing thoughts. The mate bond was pulling them closer with every interaction, and part of her wanted to give in, to let it carry her away. But another part, the practical part that had kept her alive all these years, knew she needed to stay focused. The trials were in less than 12 hours. There was no time for distraction. "What about the other tests?" she asked, forcing herself to think past the exhaustion. "The trial of strength is combat, yes? I understand that now. But what about wisdom and heart?" Demon's expression darkened. "The trial of wisdom involves a series of questions posed by the Council of Elders. They will ask you about pack law, about history, about political situations, and how you would handle them. There is no way to prepare for every possible question, but I can give you a foundation. Basic pack structure, the most important historical events, the key alliances and conflicts between territories." He moved to a desk in the corner and pulled out several books, thick volumes bound in leather. "We have a few hours. I will teach you what I can." They worked through the night, Demon explaining the complex web of pack politics, the bloodlines and betrayals, the wars and peace treaties that had shaped their world. Elara absorbed it all with desperate focus, asking questions, making connections, forcing her exhausted brain to retain every detail. She had always been good at learning when she had to be. Life had taught her to adapt or die. This was just another adaptation. But as dawn approached, as the sky outside the windows began to lighten from black to gray, Demon finally closed the last book and looked at her with an expression that made her heart clench. "There is one more thing you need to know," he said quietly. "The trial of heart. It is the most difficult of the three because there is no way to prepare for it. The trial will force you to make an impossible choice, usually between your own desires and the good of the pack. It is designed to reveal who you are at your core, what you value most. And Elara, you need to understand that there is no right answer. Whatever you choose, someone will suffer. That is the point. Aluna must be able to make hard decisions, to sacrifice her own happiness if necessary, to put the pack first even when it destroys her." His hands clenched into fists on the desk. "I hate this trial. I have always hated it, because it asks you to prove your worthiness by accepting pain, and that is not what leadership should be about." Elara reached across the desk and covered his hand with hers. The touch sent warmth spreading up her arm, the mate bond singing with contentment at the contact. "Then I will face it the same way I faced Lady Vivian's question," she said softly. "With honesty. I cannot be anything other than who I am. If that is enough, then I will pass. If it is not, then at least I will fail on my own terms." She met his eyes, those beautiful golden eyes that had seen her when no one else did. "You asked me, what makes a bond real? I told you it is about choosing each other, about standing together even in darkness. I meant those words. Whatever happens in these trials, whatever they ask me to do, I choose you. I choose this bond, and I will fight with everything I have to prove I am worthy of standing beside you. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on." Demon pulled her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, the gesture so tender it made her throat tight. "You are already worthy," he said fiercely. "Never doubt that, not for a single moment." They had no time to say more. A bell tolled in the distance, marking the arrival of dawn, and Demon stiffened. "It is time," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "The trials begin now. I have to take you to the ceremonial grounds." He stood and helped her to her feet, and she realized with a start that he had conjured clothes for her while she had been studying. Not the ill-fitting borrowed dress she had arrived in, but something new. Leather pants fitted to her body, supple and strong. A tunic of deep blue that brought out the color of her eyes. Boots that actually fit, laced to her calves. It was armor disguised as clothing, and when she caught her reflection in a polished shield hanging on the wall, she barely recognized herself. She looked like a warrior, like someone who belonged in this world of power and danger. "Thank you," she whispered, touching the soft leather of the tunic. Demon's expression was pained. "It is not enough," he said. "Clothes and a few hours of training are not enough to prepare you for what is coming. But it is all I can give you." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone in the same gesture he had used in the Great Hall. "Remember this. No matter what happens, no matter what they ask you, you are mine, and I am yours. That bond is unbreakable. It will give you strength when you have none left. Lean on it. Lean on me. I will be there, at the edge of the arena, and if you need me, if you call for me, I will come. Damn the rules. Damn the traditions. I will not lose you." The words should have been comforting, but they terrified her, because they meant he believed she might actually need saving, that the trials were dangerous enough that even the mate bond might not be enough to protect her. But Alara forced herself to smile, to project a confidence she did not entirely feel. "I will not call," she said firmly. "I will pass these trials on my own, and when I do, we will complete the claiming ceremony, and there will be no more questions, no more doubts. Just us." She leaned up and kissed him, a brief press of lips that nevertheless sent electricity racing through her entire body. The mate bond flared bright and hot between them, and she felt his wolf respond to hers, the two animals recognizing each other, claiming each other. When she pulled back, Demon's eyes were glowing. Pure gold, his control clearly hanging by a thread. "You are going to be the death of me," he said roughly, but there was affection in his voice, warmth that balanced the concern. "Come. We cannot delay any longer." He led her through the palace, down corridors and staircases she had not seen before, until they emerged into a massive outdoor arena carved into the mountainside itself. The rising sun cast long shadows across the stone floor, and Alara could see that the amphitheater was already filled with spectators. Every noble family, every pack representative, every person who had a stake in who became Luna Queen. And at the far end, standing in a raised box draped with silver fabric, was Lady Vivian. She wore white today, pure and virginal, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She looked like an angel. But when her eyes met Alara's across the distance, there was nothing angelic in her expression. Only cold, calculating hatred. Demon walked Alara to the center of the arena, and there he had to stop. The rules were clear. Once the trials began, he could not help her, could not advise her, could only watch and pray that she survived. He squeezed her hand one last time, his grip almost painful in its intensity. "Be smart, be strong, and remember, you are a first Luna. The power is in your blood, in your bones. Trust it." Then he released her and walked to his own viewing platform, opposite Vivian's, and Alara felt the loss of his presence like a physical ache. She was alone now, truly alone, standing in the center of an arena full of people who wanted to see her fail. But she was not the same girl who had entered the Great Hall yesterday. That girl had been invisible, powerless, afraid. This girl had a wolf that sang with ancient power. This girl had a mate who believed in her. This girl had something to fight for. The Council of Elders emerged from an archway at the north end of the arena. There were 7 of them, ancient werewolves whose combined age probably exceeded 1,000 years. They moved slowly, with the careful dignity of those who had seen empires rise and fall. The eldest, a woman with white hair that fell to her waist and eyes like chips of ice, stepped forward. Ilara, called no name, you have claimed the right to stand as mate to Alpha King Demon Blackthorn and to take the title of Luna Queen. But such a claim must be proven. You will face 3 trials: trial of strength, trial of wisdom, trial of heart. Fail anyone, and your claim is void. Do you accept these terms? Her voice carried across the arena with unnatural clarity, and Ilara knew it was magic, the same magic that probably warded the trials themselves. I accept, Ilara called back, and her voice did not shake. She would not give them that satisfaction. The elder nodded. Then let the trial of strength begin. You will face 3 opponents in single combat. You must defeat all 3, or yield and accept failure. Your opponents have been chosen by Lady Vivienne Silvermoon, as is her right as primary challenger to your claim. Of course Vivienne had chosen the opponents. Of course she would pick the most difficult, most skilled warriors she could find. Ilara's wolf snarled inside her chest, ready to fight, ready to prove that they were not prey. A door opened at the eastern edge of the arena, and Ilara's first opponent entered. He was massive, easily 7 feet tall in human form, with muscles that looked like they had been carved from stone. His eyes were a pale, cold blue, and when he smiled at her, she saw that his teeth had been filed to points. A warrior, a killer, someone who had spent his entire life honing his body into a weapon. My name is Cale Ironclaw, he said, his voice like gravel scraping over metal. I have killed 52 opponents in the fighting pits. You will be 53. He did not wait for her to respond. He shifted mid-step, his transformation so fast that Ilara barely had time to register it before a massive gray wolf was charging across the arena floor toward her. Every instinct in her screamed to run, but running would mean failure. So instead, Ilara did the only thing she could. She shifted. Her transformation was not as smooth as Cale's, not as practiced, but it was fast enough. She felt her bones reshape, felt her senses explode outward, and then she was meeting his charge head-on, wolf to wolf, refusing to give ground. They collided with a force that drove the air from her lungs. Cale was heavier, stronger, and he used that advantage ruthlessly, trying to bowl her over, to pin her beneath his bulk. But Ilara remembered what Demon had taught her. She was smaller, faster. She could not win a contest of pure strength, so she would not try. She twisted beneath Cale's weight, using his own momentum against him, and raked her claws across his exposed flank. He howled in pain and rage, blood darkening his gray fur, and spun to snap at her. His jaws closed on air as Ilara danced out of reach. They circled each other, both breathing hard, both assessing. Cale had underestimated her. He had expected an easy kill, and she had drawn first blood instead. That made him dangerous, because now he would not hold back. He feinted left and then lunged right, a move designed to catch her off balance. But Ilara had seen it coming. She had spent her whole life reading people, learning to anticipate their movements so she could avoid trouble. This was no different. She dropped low, letting Cale sail over her, and then surged up to sink her teeth into his throat. Not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to make her point. She could have killed him. She chose not to. Cale went still in her grip, recognizing the truth of it. He had lost. Ilara released him and stepped back, shifting to human form even as he did the same. He was bleeding from the shallow bite on his throat, his expression stunned. You spared me, he said, touching the wound gingerly. Why? Because the trial is to defeat you, not to kill you, Ilara replied, pulling on the clothes that had been left at the edge of the arena for this purpose. Her hands were shaking with adrenaline, but her voice was steady. And because mercy is not weakness. Cale stared at her for a long moment, then slowly dropped to one knee, his fist pressed over his heart in a gesture of respect. You fight with honor, he said formally. I yield. The arena erupted in shocked whispers. Elara had not just won. She had won. Decisively and with mercy, which was not something anyone had expected from an untrained Omega facing a pit fighter. She allowed herself one quick glance at Demon's platform and found him standing at the rail, his eyes blazing with pride and something darker, more possessive. He had known she could do it. He had believed in her even when she had doubted herself. The second opponent did not give her time to catch her breath. The door opened again, and this time a woman entered. She was lean and graceful, with red hair braided down her back and eyes like green glass. I am Sarah Swiftpaw, she announced, and I will not underestimate you as Kale did. She shifted without warning, a rust-colored wolf launching across the arena with blinding speed. Sarah was different from Kale. Where he had relied on brute strength, she was all speed and precision. She circled Elara, striking from unexpected angles, testing her defenses, looking for weakness. And she found it. Elara was tired from the first fight, her movements a fraction slower than they should be. Sarah noticed and pressed the advantage, coming in fast and low, her jaws snapping at Elara's legs, trying to cripple her mobility. Elara shifted and fought back, but she was being driven backward, forced to give ground. Sarah was herding her toward the arena wall, where she would have no room to maneuver, where speed would no longer matter. Think. Demon's voice echoed in her memory. You cannot win through strength alone. Use your instincts. Trust your wolf. Elara let her human mind quiet, let her wolf take over more fully than before. And in that moment of surrender, she felt it. The ancient power in her blood, the legacy of the first Lunas that Demon had said she carried. It surged through her like liquid fire, and suddenly she was not tired anymore. She was energized, powerful, and she could see everything with perfect clarity. Sarah's pattern, the slight limp in her right hind leg from an old injury, the way she always fainted twice before striking, the overconfidence in her eyes. Elara stopped retreating. She planted her feet, and when Sarah came in for what should have been the killing strike, Elara twisted in a way that should have been impossible, that defied physics and biology both, and caught Sarah mid-leap. They went down in a tangle of fur and claws, rolling across the stone floor. But when they came to a stop, Elara was on top, her teeth at Sarah's throat, her eyes burning with power that made Sarah freeze in shock. Yield, Elara growled, the word barely recognizable through her wolf's throat. Or I end this. Sarah yielded. She had no choice. When Elara released her and shifted back to human form, she felt the power still thrumming under her skin, making her fingertips glow faintly silver. The mark Demon had spoken of, the one on her temple, was visible now. She could see it reflected in the polished shields mounted around the arena, a crescent moon in shimmering silver that marked her as what she was. First Luna. Ancient blood. Power that had been sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake. The crowd was no longer whispering. They were silent, stunned into speechlessness by what they had just witnessed. 2 victories. Against opponents who should have destroyed her. And she had done it not through luck, but through skill, through strategy, through a power that was undeniably real. Lady Vivian looked sick. Demon looked like he wanted to leap down from his platform and claim her right there in front of everyone. The third opponent emerged from the door, and this time, Elara recognized him. He was young, maybe 20, with sandy blonde hair and kind brown eyes that looked apologetic. I am Finn Meadowrun, he said quietly. I did not volunteer for this. Lady Vivian commanded my pack to send someone, and I drew the short straw. I do not want to hurt you. The admission surprised her. Then yield now, Elara suggested, not unkindly. There is no shame in... But Finn shook his head. My alpha ordered me to fight. If I yield without trying, my entire pack will be punished. I have no choice. And then he shifted. A smaller brown wolf that looked almost friendly, and Alara's heart sank because she understood. Vivienne had not sent Finn to defeat Alara. She had sent him to force Alara to hurt someone innocent, to taint her victories with cruelty. If Alara held back, she might lose. If she fought at full strength, she would injure or potentially kill a boy who had done nothing wrong except obey his alpha's command. It was a no-win situation. But Alara was learning. She was adapting. She shifted and met Finn in the center of the arena, and they circled each other warily. He attacked, but his heart was not in it. His strikes were careful, measured, designed to look like a real fight, while not actually trying to hurt her. He was giving her an out, making it easy for her to win. And in that moment, Alara made a choice. She let him land a yow. Hit. Not a serious one, but enough to make it look like a real fight. Then she retaliated with controlled strikes that pushed him back, that made it clear she could defeat him but chose to do so with minimal harm. They danced around each other like that for several minutes, a choreographed fight that looked real to the untrained eye, but was actually an exercise in mutual mercy. And when Alara finally pinned Finn and he yielded, both of them were breathing hard, but neither was seriously injured. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? As they shifted back to human form, Finn looked at her with gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, so quietly that only she could hear. "You could have destroyed me. You chose not to." Alara just nodded. She understood what it was like to be powerless, to be forced into situations you did not choose. She would not punish him for that. The elder stepped forward once more. 3 opponents faced, 3 victories achieved. The trial of strength is complete. She paused, her ancient eyes studying Alara with new interest. "You have proven you possess the physical capability to defend yourself and your pack. Now we test your mind. The trial of wisdom begins now." A throne appeared in the center of the arena, conjured by magic, and Alara was directed to sit in it. The 7 elders formed a semicircle around her, and the eldest began to speak. "We will ask you 7 questions. You must answer 5 correctly to pass. Be warned, these questions have no single right answer. We judge not just your knowledge, but your reasoning, your values, your ability to think under pressure." The first question came from the eldest. "A pack on your northern border request asylum, claiming persecution from their current alpha. But accepting them would violate a peace treaty with that alpha's territory. What do you do?" Alara took a breath, forcing herself to think past the exhaustion and adrenaline. "I would investigate the claims first," she said carefully. "Send neutral observers to verify the persecution. If it is real, then the peace treaty is already violated by one party. A treaty that protects abusers is not worth keeping. I would offer asylum to those who need it and deal with the political consequences, honestly. But I would not accept refugees without verification, because that would open the door to manipulation." The elder nodded, her expression giving nothing away. "Acceptable answer. Next question." The second elder, a man with a scarred face, asked, "Your mate, the Alpha King, makes a decision you believe is wrong. It will harm innocent people. Do you support him publicly, or do you challenge him?" This was a trap. If she said she would blindly support Demon, they would call her weak. If she said she would publicly challenge him, they would say she was undermining his authority. Alara met the elders. Gaze directly. "I would speak with him privately first. Give him a chance to explain his reasoning, because perhaps I am missing information he has. If I still believe he is wrong after that conversation, I would tell him so honestly. And if he chooses to proceed anyway, then I would make my own position known publicly, not as opposition, but as alternative perspective. Aluna's job is not to be a silent shadow or a political rival. It is to be a partner who offers counsel, even when that counsel is difficult to hear." Several of the elders nodded slightly, and Alara felt a flicker of hope. The questions continued, each one more complex than the last. They asked her about resource distribution during famine, about justice when both parties in a conflict have valid claims, about navigating diplomatic relations with pacts that had blood feuds going back centuries. And with each answer, Alara drew not just on the brief education Demon had given her, but on her own life experience. She knew what it was like to be hungry, to be powerless, to be caught between impossible choices. She answered with honesty and compassion, with logic tempered by empathy, and she could see the elders responding to it. When the 7th question was complete, the eldest elder stepped back and conferred quietly with the others. The conversation lasted several tense minutes, during which Alara sat frozen in the conjured throne, her heart pounding. Finally, the eldest turned back to face her. 6 answers we found acceptable. 1 we found lacking. You have passed the trial of wisdom. Relief flooded through Alara so intensely she felt dizzy. 2 trials down, 1 to go. But the relief was short-lived, because she knew what came next. The trial of heart. The impossible choice. The test that had no right answer. The elders stepped aside, and the arena floor began to change. Magic swirled through the air, thick and oppressive, and when it cleared, Alara was no longer sitting on a throne in an arena. She was standing in a village. Not a real village. She could sense the illusion, feel the magic holding it together. But it looked real enough. Small houses with thatched roofs, children playing in the dirt streets, the smell of cooking fires and livestock. And in the distance, she could hear screaming. This is the trial of heart. The eldest elder's voice echoed around her, disembodied, coming from everywhere and nowhere. You must make a choice. In this village, there are 50 innocent people. Men, women, children. All members of your pack, all under your protection. But there is also a traitor among them, someone who has been selling information to your enemies, information that will lead to an attack that could kill thousands. You have narrowed the traitor down to 2 people. One is an elder woman who has lived in this village her entire life, beloved by all. The other is a young man, orphaned, with no family or friends to speak for him. You have time to interrogate only one before the attack happens. Choose wrong, and the traitor escapes. Choose right, and you save countless lives. But you will never know for certain which one is guilty. Who do you interrogate? The question hit Alara like a physical blow. This was not about knowledge or combat skill. This was about revealing who she was at her core. Would she choose the obvious suspect, the orphan with nothing to lose? Or would she trust her instincts, which whispered that obvious was rarely true? She could feel the magic of the trial pressing on her, demanding an answer. But she forced herself to think past the pressure. She had been that orphan once. The person with no voice, no power, no one to defend them. And she knew from bitter experience that those were exactly the people who got blamed when something went wrong, whether they were guilty or not. I interrogate the elder woman, Alara said clearly, and she heard gasps from the spectators watching through the magical illusion. She had chosen the sympathetic one, the beloved one. She had made herself look cruel. But the magic shifted, and suddenly she was standing in a room with the elderly woman, and the woman's mask cracked. Beneath the sweet grandmother exterior was a cold, calculating intelligence that had been selling out her pack for years, all while hiding behind her age and reputation. Alara had been right. The obvious suspect had been innocent. The beloved one had been guilty. The illusion dissolved, and Alara was back in the arena, shaking with the after effects of the trial's magic. But the elders were nodding, and the eldest actually smiled. You chose correctly, she said. Not because you were lucky, but because you understood that those who appear most innocent are often the best at hiding guilt. You looked past sentiment to see the truth. But the trial was not over. The magic swirled again, and this time when it cleared, Alara was standing on a cliff edge. Below her, hanging by a rope that was fraying with Each passing second were two people. Demon. And a child, maybe 8 years old, eyes wide with terror. Both were going to fall. The rope would not hold them both. She had to choose. Save her mate, the love of her life, the man she had bonded with, or save the innocent child who had done nothing to deserve this fate. Choose, the elder's voice commanded. You can only save one. Who do you condemn to death? Alara's mind went blank with horror. This was the impossible choice. This was the test designed to break her. There was no right answer. Whatever she chose would haunt her forever. She could feel Demon's presence through the mate bond, could sense his fear, but also his determination. And through that bond, she felt him pushing a single thought toward her. Save the child. But could she? Could she choose to let Demon fall, knowing that losing him would break something fundamental inside her? Could she choose to save him, knowing that the child's blood would be on her hands? The rope frayed further. She was running out of time, and in that moment of absolute crisis, Alara understood what the trial was really testing. It was not about who she would save. It was about whether she could make the hard choice at all, whether she could accept the responsibility of being a Luna, of holding power over life and death. And there was only one answer that fit who she was. I saved the child, Alara said, her voice breaking on the words. I saved the child, and I live with the consequences, because that is what a Luna does. She protects the innocent, even when it costs her everything. The illusion shattered like glass, and Demon was suddenly there, solid and real, pulling her into his arms as she collapsed against him. The trial had been a test, a cruel illusion, but the emotion had been real. The choice had been real, and she had made it. You passed, Demon murmured into her hair, his voice rough with emotion. All 3 trials. You passed. The eldest elder approached them, and for the first time, there was warmth in her ancient eyes. Alara, called no name, you have proven yourself worthy through strength, wisdom, and heart. From this day forward, you are recognized as the true mate of Alpha King Demon Blackthorn, and as Luna Queen of all Pacts. May your rule be long and just. The arena erupted in cheers. Not from everyone. Vivienne and her supporters stood silent, their expressions ranging from shock to fury. But the majority of the crowd was on its feet, celebrating the girl who had come from nothing and proven she could stand with kings. Demon cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, deep and claiming, right there in front of everyone. And Alara kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into that kiss. Relief, joy, love. Yes, love. It was too soon, too fast, but the mate bond did not lie. She loved him, and he loved her. She could feel it in every beat of his heart that echoed in time with hers. When they finally broke. Apart, Demon rested his forehead against hers. Tonight, he said quietly, so only she could hear. Tonight we complete the claiming ceremony. Tonight you become mine in every way that matters, and I become yours. No more trials. No more tests. Just us. Alara smiled, tired and battered but triumphant. Just us, she agreed. And as Demon led her from the arena, his hand warm and sure in hers, Alara looked back one last time at the place where she had proven herself. She had walked into that arena as nobody. She walked out as Luna Queen. Not because of her bloodline, though that was part of it. Not because of Demon's choice, though that had given her the opportunity, but because she had fought for it. Because she had chosen to be brave even when she was terrified. Because she had refused to let anyone make her feel less than ever again. And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting light across the kingdom that was now hers to protect, Alara finally understood what Demon had seen in her from the very beginning. She was not nobody. She had never been nobody. She had just been waiting for someone to see her. And now, the whole world would see. The girl they had laughed at had become their queen, and she would make damn sure they never forgot it.